handouts for everybody here tonight. Agendas and minutes. Let's see, would you mind passing yours out, Steve?
Okay. Rachel's not coming, Josh won't be here, and Danny also excused to the south.
So it's a small group tonight.
Ben, did you get one?
No, not yet.
There's one for you, Steve.
Emily?
Okay.
She's not coming. Josh is not gonna be here. Emily and Rachel are not gonna be here, and Danny also contacted me.
No, we couldn't get it to work, but it's also not the most important part of the meeting, so we're just gonna let it go.
Crystal, I was wrong, everybody's here.
Oh, okay, okay,
And this is for you, Krista.
okay, thank you.
Sure.
I'm not.
I gotta
see that
Eric
limbo.
was on this team, but,
Do we,
I'll forward this one.
do we have a quorum?
pardon me?
Just barely, I think.
Just barely,
Yeah.
yeah. Yes, yeah. Just barely. So, we have a quorum. No absences. We have Josh, Emily, Rachel, and Danny. Are there any additions or adjustments to the agenda?
I don't have any.
Okay. So we next need to approve April's minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Wasn't here.
Okay.
Does that matter? Do we have enough people?
You could abstain,
Yeah,
No, I know.
no, but if we do
Yeah.
have people.
it's,
Yeah,
it's
you'll-
part of the
You'll
count.
get 3 out of 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
All in favor of accepting the minutes? Abstentions? We don't need to ask about any no's. Okay. Audience with the public, do you guys want to say anything? Okay, here we go. Tom,
So I wanted to talk a bit about goals for the ESEA grant for next year. That ESEA is the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, and it's the act under which all of the title money is allocated. So at this point, we still have no allocation from DOE. And as I said at the last board meeting, that schools have never been in this situation before. The guidance that we have is that it seems unlikely that Title I is going to be cut, and we should probably plan for an amount similar to what we have this year. So one of the requirements of the law is that every year when we decide how we want to spend this money, we have to go public with our goals and how we want to spend it, and then allow some time for public input on that process. And that's typically done by just having it presented at a board meeting and then allowing some time for the public to weigh in either at that board meeting or afterwards. So what I wanted to do is, in anticipation of bringing this up at the first board meeting in June, I wanted to talk with you about the landscape and then get input from you if you would like to provide it. So let me direct you. This is all complicated stuff, and I'm going to try to make it as clear as possible. Can I direct your attention to the document that looks like this? Do you need one there? You have it. Okay. So what you have here is a breakdown of what we would be spending title money on that takes into account pay raises, et cetera, that are already determined for next year. This also takes into account positions that the board has already voted, that the board in its budget knows that we would be reducing. So if you remember back a few months ago when I first talked about this pickle we're in with title money, the idea was that if all of this is eliminated, then we should plan for some reductions right now so that we're not in as bad a position as we could be. So what we're planning on for next year is, if we start at Miller, 1 pre-K teacher, 2 interventionists, a small amount for family engagement, which is required by the law that you have to do that, bringing it to a total of $341,000 and some odd dollars. This, if I remember correctly, includes a reduction of a half-time math interventionist at Miller. That person had been splitting their time as the district MLL teacher, and the board has voted to make MLL full-time. So we reduced that half-time intervention position from Miller. At Warren Community School, we used to have a classroom teacher, but we've taken that out. So what we now have is 1 interventionist, 1 ed tech for intervention, and some family engagement, leaving a total of $168,000 and some odd dollars. Now, this next part is where things get interesting. I've had to do a lot of research about this. Christina Watton, I'm sure, could have rattled it off right away, but this is all new learning to me. So under Title I, here's how it intersects with that McKinney-Vento law for homelessness. There is a requirement that districts set aside, right off the top, a certain amount of your Title I funds for McKinney-Vento students. That's not just in the schools that we have set up our Title I plans for. That's Miller and Warren, but that's district-wide. And any student that is identified as McKinney-Vento automatically qualifies as a Title I student. Evidently, most districts only put in a token amount for McKinney-Vento, and then they use the money for other things. I think that's really unwise, because McKinney-Vento serves the whole district, and it really uses the money where it, I think, is most needed by kids who most need it. So at present, and historically, we have used that McKinney-Vento homeless set aside and used it to fund the things you see here. So there's an ed tech who is a driver who provides transportation, some supplies, a whole $20,000 for transportation. So that's transportation costs beyond the driver's salary. And that brings that to a total of $73,800 some odd dollars. So that's what we would be looking at for Title I for next year. Now, I'd like to compare that to where we are for this year with Title I. So if you flip the page to the second page here, and you go all the way down to the bottom, this chart that looks like this, not the top bit, but the bottom bit, you will see that at present, this year, we're spending $752,000, $786.60 on Title I. That's because we have things in it this year that we've already decided to remove next year, like the kindergarten teacher. So the overall message there is that if the Title I funding remains flat, we are already planning to spend almost $170,000 less in Title I next year than we are right now. That makes sense?
Mhm.
Okay. So my thinking, that potentially gives us $170,000 worth of space to play with or to do new things with in Title I,
If we get all of them.
if we get all of those funds. So, and I have some ideas about what that could look like. Okay, now, if we go back to the first page, and if I direct your attention to the chart at the bottom of the first page, which is Title II, III, IV, V funds. In our district, because we're a rural district, we qualify for Title V. Title V is specifically to help rural school districts. Not all districts qualify for Title V. That really helps us, because what we're allowed to do is take any money we get under 2, 3, or 4, which are earmarked for different purposes, and put them into Title V, which, for lots of reasons that would for us is much easier to spend. There are fewer bureaucratic requirements to actually spend the money once it's in Title V. So for really all the rest of this, what we're talking about is Title V money. So this is what we currently have in Title V. We have $20,000 for the software, the curriculum development software, 17 some odd $1,000 to pay for substitutes that cover meetings of curriculum representatives and other teacher collaboration groups around curriculum. The big ticket item is almost $70,000 to pay our McKinney-Vento program coordinator. That's Nancy Stover. That's a half-time position, and she does an amazing job. And then we also spend $6,000 some odd dollars for 1/10 of an art teacher. This is actually 0.2 of a half-time person, if that makes sense. And then we have some literacy curriculum materials and training for $47,000. So that's what's in there right now. That would include a 3% raise for Nancy Stover, which she's certainly entitled to. Okay. Here's where more information comes in. I'll go back to the second page and look at all the stuff with red lines through it. Now, I did get communication, which I mentioned in one of my board reports back in March, that our Title V allocation for next year is anticipated to be $9,400 roughly. I don't know if that's for real or not. Nobody seems to know if that's for real.
And compared to 160.
Right. So what I'm trying to anticipate is if that number is for real, then all of those things in red we can't pay for with Title V that we have been paying for with Title V. I think at the most we could pay for that art teacher position and some supplies. Now, you had as a board created basically a contingency fund from our fund balance that we could dip into to pay for these expenses if they have to fall back on the local taxpayers, because they are rather essential. But, and now we may want to flip to the back page. This kind of sums up everything that I just said. So the chart at the top reflects, we may very well have an extra $170,000 to play around with in Title I, but we may have this shortfall in Title V that we would pick up from the general fund. We've already sort of made plans to do that. So what that has led me to think about is if we do indeed have $170,000 worth of Title I money that we could do something additional with, there are some ideas. First idea that I've had well, let me talk about that one later, actually. I'll start with the second bullet. We could potentially move Nancy Stover's position into the Title I McKinney-Vento homeless. So evidently there is no upper limit to the amount of money we can right off the bat take from Title I and put toward McKinney-Vento. So we could take that whole position and put it in there. We have to make sure that we write our district's Title I goals and comprehensive needs assessment to reflect that need, which we can certainly do when we write the grant. That would mean that we wouldn't have to dip into that contingency fund and we could save it for something else. So I think that's a really good idea, at least to try. Then the other amount of money that we could play around with is an idea that I would love to discuss with you a little bit more and get your guidance about. And that is to add a library literacy specialist at Warren and Miller schools. So I have a handout that I've given you here. It looks like this. That is a draft of what that position could be.
We don't have that.
You don't have it? Oh, okay, here are a number of copies.
Yeah, I just have one there.
I might. You have the same thing?
Yep. So this is one
You have extra?
person for both schools.
Yes.
Do you have it?
And this is definitely just an idea. There's been no movement on this other than to talk to some administrators about it to see what they think. In particular, Justin and Julia. Both of them really liked the idea. So here's what I was thinking. It's no secret that I feel that we really have a lot of work to do on the libraries. And I can understand and respect why now is not the time to add another library media specialist to the district budget. But it occurred to me just last week that actually this would be allowable under Title I because we already have one library media specialist, which means we're allowed to supplement that with an additional person in the schools that we have targeted for our Title I program. That's Miller and Warren. And my thinking is the libraries in general are really underutilized. And I think in those schools in particular, the kids' library time could really be a lot more than it is. So I was thinking that this person in those schools, if we did it a half-time person, that would cost us about $65,000. I mean, it depends on where that person would fall on the pay scale. But that's the best estimate I have from Karen Pike. And they could, for example, family engagement is required by Title I. They could really help coordinate family engagement events through the library. They could take library resources that are kind of aligned to the units in the literacy program and at the different reading levels. And they could use our DIBELS data, our literacy screening data, to identify which kids need extra support. And then when those kids go for library time, rather than just check out books or look at books, they could actually work with a person on materials in the library at their reading level. That person could also work with the teachers to curate little collections of resources in the library for science and social studies, which I don't think we are doing enough with. And on and on. These are just some of the ideas that I had. So I wanted to sort of bounce that off of this committee to see conceptually what people think. And if there are other ideas that we might want to consider as if we want to flesh this out.
Could you do half of the library literacy specialist and Nancy's position? Would be enough?
In Title I?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we'd have about, I mean, if these numbers hold up,
Right.
we'd have $170,000 to work with. Nancy's position is about 70, and then a half-time, this is about 65. So it wouldn't even, we'd still have like 30,000 left over.
Yeah. So you get both.
And it wouldn't impact the local taxpayer.
You would be,
You could start with the half and then see how it goes for a year and then potentially move it up to full-time
Right.
next year.
Possibly.
what's the status of the literacy curriculum materials, the 47,000? Is that stuff that was purchased this year, or is that?
That was a lot of stuff that was purchased this year and trainings that we did.
So
Off the top of my head, I don't remember. I meant to talk with Karen about it before I got here, and I just didn't have time to have her look through and itemize it for me.
So that the need for literacy resource materials drops from 47,000 to 3,000.
Well, it does not. We're definitely going to need more, but that's what would be available in Title V if that number holds up. So if we need more, we'd have to find it elsewhere.
And you can't put that in Title I or some of it.
I might be able to do some of it. The rules of Title I would have to apply. And right at this moment, I don't know how it would sort out.
You should know that the things you would be funding temporarily is temporary funding, right? So I think a better way, a smarter way to think of it is you're delaying eliminating it by a year, because unless you can come up with another funding source a year from now to reinstate that stuff, you don't have anywhere to go except to cut it.
You mean both of those positions?
No, the
Okay.
things that would be moved into the reserve fund, which didn't you say would be the things, and I'm a little confused because the things in red you said would be moved,
The
would be
things
funded
that-
with the reserve fund, but that includes the homeless coordinator.
That's right. That one of the things we had discussed is that if all of this title funding got cut, we really need that homeless coordinator, and she should be moved into the reserve fund. But this idea would take her out of the reserve fund and into Title I.
But you're leaving the other things in the reserve fund?
No, everything that's in red there would potentially, yes, I'm sorry, yes, those would have to go into the reserve fund. I would
Unless, can we use Title I?
I would try to see how much I could get into Title I.
But
So
but then if those other positions are funded with the extra potential Title I funds, next year we would suspect we would have the same number again.
I would suspect, and what I've been thinking, if I look at where taken this year and kind of gained the lay of the land, and one of the issues that does concern me of things we've done with grants is that they've been wonderful but not necessarily sustainable. And these ideas, however, would be sustainable because they would be expenses that would always be allowable under Title I. And what it would mean is we'd have to sort of think, okay, if we did this, we're really sort of intellectually at least committing that we're going to keep funding a homeless coordinator through Title I. And we're going to keep funding extra literacy support through the libraries, which I personally think is a great way to do it, through Title I. So I think that would be sustainable because Title I, Lord and politicians willing, is not going away.
I'm just thinking about Linda Pease at some point had asked for some literacy support or so.
She has, so I can talk about that. We can give her literacy support, but not as through our Title I as it's currently set up, because we have our Title I set up in the school-wide model, which means it's only going to Warren and Miller. And there are a few things that can be district-wide, like homeless. But we couldn't just buy her a literacy program out of Title I on our current model. Our current model is probably the best way to do it. The other way to do it is we would have to identify every student that qualifies, like by their data, for Title I, and then we'd have to limit our Title I services to only those students. So right now at Warren and Miller, because it's school-wide, every student at Warren and Miller gets the support. So I do think, and I was just talking with Linda about this the other day, I do think they need resources that they don't have. We just can't really use Title I for it.
But our new library media specialist will have more time to spend at that school now if we were to hire a half-time.
I think so. That's part of, a benefit.
Makes sense to me.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Sure.
Literacy curriculum, is there more than just that in the general budget?
Where you,
Yes.
The literacy curriculum
Oh.
materials?
There was some in the general budget. Like we put it in for Spire.
I think that doesn't-
Yeah.
sorry.
Yes, we did put that in.
So if we were to move ahead with this Title I shift, does it preclude us using our original fallback plan of the reserve fund that we established for these things that we've decided are most essential?
I don't think so.
Okay, so my big concern is, I mean, we're getting some guidance, but it's not that reliable, and
Yeah.
I feel like there are players in this situation who have not earned a reputation for trustworthiness or swift and decisive action. And so I would hate for us to do something reasonable based on all the available information and, justifiable and beneficial, only to find that when we actually get genuine information that we're then forced to scramble and try to walk some of that back and come up with an additional contingency plan. So as long as we're free in that sort of worst case scenario to fall back on those funds and make sure that we are maintaining what we've decided are kind of the most essential things, then I would be okay with moving ahead with it. But
I think the idea at the moment is that we have to go forward with the idea that we're going to be paying for those items in red right now out of that reserve fund that you've established. And we won't know about whether the title money is available until sometime over the summer. So that at that point, if it is available, that will mean we don't have to take it out of that fund. And then we could advertise for this position and get it going at that point. It would just save us from having to tap into the fund.
or I guess fund it to a lower level than we would otherwise need to, since we're creating it, but we're not immediately dumping real money into it. I understand.
Yeah. And do you think I'm correct about that, Steve?
Well, if I may be wrong, but I thought with both of those reserve funds, if you don't get any title money at all, then those reserve funds
Then
would
that's available.
not be able to support everything that was in
They would
title
not.
funds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, if we don't get any title money, then we're coming back to this list. We're thinking, what do we get rid of from that?
The reserve fund is bigger than that. It's intended to address title, local entitlement, and food service.
Mhm.
The issue is that there's uncertainty around all three of those. There's not enough to cover all three of those.
Right.
But we also don't know what's going to happen with those. So,
And there's also not enough we don't know what next year looks like. I mean, that fund is, I'm sorry, the year after next.
no, right. I mean, we don't know what
Yeah.
next year looks like because it's tied to the federal budget,
Right.
right? All the legal battle stuff aside that, it's happening now. It's really tied. That could have an impact, but it's really tied to what happens with the federal budget, which will come after, like you said, we'll know in the summertime.
After we do all
We'll get-
this.
Right. Yeah. It's always been disjointed like this. It's never made sense how when you get the information about the funding, it's just clumsy that way.
So is there anything that anybody here would like to see in this before we take it to the full board?
The positions that were reduced are not needed, right?
That's right. So those positions were like the pre-K position in Warren. We really only had enough enrollment for one classroom. And then also we had it's the enrollment at Warren. We have the third grade teacher retiring, and so we didn't fill that position. We had been paying for a kindergarten teacher out of Title I, but we're now going to pay for them with the general fund money that we had funded that retiring third grade teacher with.
Right.
So, yeah. I think there's some questions about whether or not staff may be moving from Warren to Miller, but that's not associated with title money.
And the halftime math interventionist
At Miller,
is taken care of.
well, we're just eliminating that position. I did have an email exchange with Julia today about this library proposal. And she said that she and Jamie White had discussed it, and they felt that the library proposal would be more beneficial to them than having that math halftime interventionist.
That's not to say there's not a need.
There's a big need. for
Yeah,
math
Ideally,
intervention
she would
discipline.
like to have both, but
I think one of the neat things about the the library interventionist is that like any kid could get help. They wouldn't have to go through the system. So I think it's just a very cool idea. I like it a lot.
Well, I hope a lot of it depends on finding a person.
Mm.
Part of my thinking has been informed by our new library media specialist, Jamie, who, she has spent a lot of time in the libraries and just meeting with me weekly to report on what she is seeing. And it's similar to what I suspected and had seen some of in many of the libraries, and in particular in those schools. It's just highly underutilized. And so bringing some life to the space and to the collections and using the time, the kids are already going to the library.
Mhm.
That time is in their schedule, and it's not because of the amount of staffing resources we have, it's not time that's utilized well. So they could actually be getting taught rather than just sort of managed.
Mhm.
And I
Um,
don't even know if they are having actual library time at Miller and Warren. I think they're just like going and checking out books. They don't have,
It's not like a library program.
right.
Yeah.
Like all of our classes come and have a 40-minute library class.
Yeah, they don't, to my knowledge, and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus unduly, but I don't think that that's really what's happening in those schools.
No,
I know it's not at Miller.
right.
Yeah. So I don't know that there needs to be an action item on this by this committee right now. I've listed it under action items, and if anybody wants to make a motion, I certainly have the right to do that. But I mostly wanted to sound it out with the people here before it went to the full board. If we created the position at some point, it would need to be board approved. And I don't think we'd be looking at creating it until we have all the numbers and to know. So that would be at least August.
Can I just ask you a question?
Sure.
Just the ed tech McKinney-Vento driver, is that salary just for him or her driving? Or is that, because it says it's an ed tech 3?
It's not a special ed tech.
No,
That's
actually, and I'm glad
Okay.
you mentioned that. It used to be an ed tech. It used to be Sarah Davis.
Yeah.
It's now Tanya McGray, and she's a van driver. It's a different rate of pay.
Okay,
And so that there's actually, if you were to look at last year's numbers, we spent a lot more last year than we are this year because it's a different rate of pay, but it includes her salary and benefits.
well, I was just thinking, gosh, and ed tech 3, they're kind of hard to come by.
They are. We
You know,
them into
like,
the treatment.
really,
Yeah.
could somebody
That
else drive
actually-
the van?
That should not say Ed Tech 3. It's a van driver.
Okay.
I like where you're thinking.
It's kind of a waste of an ed tech 3.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Actually, the ed tech 3 that was hired left special ed to go drive the van.
Burnout. Steve, do you think we need to make a motion to bring this to the board, or?
I don't think so. I mean, we have to present it to the community and allow time for feedback. I think this is just a chance to hear about this and think about it some and give Tom some feedback as he continues to develop this idea.
Okay.
And if there's something specific that you feel passionate about that should be or should not be part of this, you certainly can make a motion.
I love the library idea.
Yay.
And keeping the coordinator's position
Yes, and keeping her,
potentially
yeah.
Title I, because then you don't have to worry about.
then we don't have to worry about it.
I can't say enough, just along the lines of the person matters. The
Yeah.
person we have doing this is Crackerjack.
Yeah,
And she just does an amazing job and really helps those families.
yeah,
So it's money well spent.
yeah. When she gave her presentation at the budget meeting, it was very clear.
Yeah.
How passionate she is about
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Mhm.
And on top of it,
Yeah.
she's really, really,
Yeah.
really good.
Mhm.
I suppose we could move to just endorse this as presented and
Okay,
give it that.
To be proposed.
good
Seal.
motion. Did you get that, Steve?
Well, I'm gonna try to write it in a complete sentence.
So
Well, with both possibilities, because really it's listing them separate.
Motion to recommend to the board to
Halftime. Library literacy specialist. And Nancy Silver's position.
I suppose that would be to move those into titles, correct? Or to create a halftime library that are
I think you
potentially.
want to be careful how you word it
Mhm.
because we don't necessarily want to preclude the other things that are in
Right.
titles. This is sort of like, if we have money.
Mhm.
Yeah,
If excess Title I funds are available.
How about instead of pinning it down to a 0.5 position, just to create a position
Mhm.
and not specify whether it's full or part-time?
Yeah, I said I don't know if it's too vague to simply move that we give this plan as presented or these options as presented our seal of approval, so that when
I
they
think
come to
you
the
could
full
say,
board.
correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, you could say, move to grant conceptual approval to the ideas for ESEA goals presented at the meeting.
I think that's kind of what I was getting
Yeah.
at. I would, yeah. So I'll move that we accept the conceptual plan for the ESEA goals as presented and move forward as options permit.
I'm writing that down in case anybody forgets.
Move forward as what permits?
As circumstances permit.
I'll second it when you stop typing.
I have a motion to accept conceptual plan as presented and move forward as circumstances permit.
Does that sound good?
So
Ben?
this committee cannot take action on behalf of the board. So any committee can't
Right.
take action on behalf of the board. So it would be
We're recommending.
to recommend to the board to accept the conceptual plan,
Mhm.
Yeah.
right? Okay. I think I have something we can use. Motion to recommend to the board to accept the conceptual plan as presented and move forward as circumstances permit.
Mhm.
Motion by Ben, second by Naomi. And the vote
The vote is
will be the
unanimous.
power of four.
Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you for being inventive.
Yeah, I really appreciate your thinking outside the box.
And I really hope that we
frame of
get
mind.
all the money.
Let's hope.
Yeah. Okay, so, Crystal,
Well, we don't have a
we don't have a thing for
projector, huh? So there goes my
Oh, no.
grand
And maybe it would work
presentation.
with your computer.
I don't know. So I printed some out, but I
Okay.
trying to save paper and ink, so I didn't print one out for everybody. So maybe we can share.
It can also be shared so that it's captured in the recording.
Right? We forgot she was there. Who is that?
Sorry. Here.
I
No,
know,
I have it on here.
Oh,
so-
okay.
No, you
You got
take it. I can talk with Crystal any day about
Okay.
programming at Prescott.
Did you, Susie?
I have it here. If you want, or you
Is there
can-
enough then?
There's
Yeah.
an extra one down here.
an extra. Okay. And I'm sorry, I just realized that it came out like that too when I printed it. I'm like, okay, this is great.
Aw. It's okay.
So again, yep, there's our vision, our mission, our values. And then what I had asked was for teachers to share any highlights from this year, anything that they felt was really valuable for you to know and read about. So we have Tammy is very excited with all of the outdoor learning that's happening in pre-K. She had received a grant, and there is information in there about that. So every Thursday, they are spending pretty much their whole day outside learning. With the grant that she received, she bought full rain suits that they are absolutely adorable.
Love that.
The book there, the kid with the red snowsuit. That's what it reminds me of.
Snowy
Because yes, Snowy Day, yes. Because it's just a full red suit. So you just
Yeah.
see all these little ones out there with their little red suits. It's pretty cute. And then she also got winter snow pants, the gator, and then the waterproof gloves, and then some insulated gloves. So they're out there in the wintertime. They're loving it.
Good.
They have their little mud kitchen that's out back. Yeah, a lot of fun. And you can see them splashing on that next one that continued in pre-K. They're out there splashing in the puddle. So instead of hearing, stay out of the water, don't get in the water, it's like, go for it, get in that water, play.
They must sleep really well.
I'm sure they do. Yeah.
It's great to see kids like just doing kid things.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
And they have a picture where they were at the fence. There was a little story walk that was set up around the fence out there that they got to do. So yes, that was a lot of fun. So you can read about that if you'd like. And then we have our kindergarten scientist and stylist. I don't want to read it for you guys, but you can read through. If you have any questions about that.
Oh, that's cute.
Oh, grass hair. I could use that.
You would see that.
We can put some chia seeds on your head now.
It is pretty cute. If we go in there, you can see they have the little cups set up there, and so you can see the different, measurements that they've been doing. And then grade 1, and these writing pieces are actually up on the bulletin board outside the classroom, so you can take a look at those. But we have had a couple of amazing days here that have been put on by our PTG. One was our Maine Maple Day, and then just most recently they did a May Day celebration, which was very, very cool. We actually had the ribbons hanging off from the flagpole out there and did the whole dance around the pole to music, and people were driving by and slowing down and stopping. And they're like, what is going on? But that was really cool.
What's a PTG?
Our parent teacher group.
Okay.
Yep. So this one here, their writing unit, tied in really nice to that Maine Maple Day. She does everything. It's their main unit. So talking about all the main symbols, animals, and the PTG put on that Maple Day. So that was really, really cool.
Very talented.
Sounds like a lot of writing for first grade.
It's when you see the writing up there and their handwriting, like a lot of them, very, very neat. Yes. Of course, you have some typical
Oh, yeah.
first grade writing samples, but yeah, there's some that are really standing out. And then second grade, the next one, and this one kind of tied into the May Day celebration, because the first station that they went to for that was all about planting. And after we're done doing a walkthrough inside here, I'd love for you to check out what we did in our gardens outside. That was really, really cool. And then they're also in the middle, they're taking advantage, getting out there, doing their writing, and learning about different habitats, but they're utilizing the nature trail that we have out behind the school. So that's really, really cool too. And then grade 3, talking about their writing celebration, what they were doing. It was a opinion writing piece. Their writing pieces are also up right now upstairs, so you could see.
Pretty cool to have some third grade advocacy for deviled eggs. That's a fairly sophisticated opinion.
That's what I thought too. I had to stop and actually read his whole. It's like, okay, what do you find interesting about those deviled eggs?
Devil's egg. Great
Mhm.
snack.
And then grade 4, he wanted to share a little bit about how he approaches math. And then the next page, he just completed his end of the year through year assessment. in math, and he was very excited with the results. We have 2 more students that need to make it up, but so you can read what he says here about his math instruction and then flip over to see the results, which I think is pretty great. So at the beginning, that first graph, it's showing you their scores in the fall. And then in the spring, you can see there's a much larger number of students that are in the blue. Well, I guess it didn't come out. They're all, the whole thing's all in blue there.
Oh, that's great.
Bless you.
Boy, Olivia had quite a.
Yes. Yes.
I'm telling you, Gus thought it was so hard.
Yes.
My son's in this class. He told me it was hard. We haven't even learned the stuff that was on the test. I'm sure you have.
But I mean, that's like to see that many kids in the blue, that really doesn't happen that often.
Mhm.
I mean, you would expect them to be in the green. So to see, and then again, look at the yellow that we had at the beginning,
No.
and that we only have, that's 2 there in the yellow, but 1 is she's like right there, 1 more point. So yeah, he was pretty proud of that.
Yeah, that's a very big shift, which is awesome.
And then 5th grade, so she had a lot to share. So there's like 3 pages
Yay.
that's all about science and social studies, and then how she's connecting it all together along with what's out there. So I'll let you, and sorry for the little, I don't know what
Yeah,
happened
it
there.
was.
I don't know why. I mean, obviously it's here like this, so I don't know.
Trying to figure out what the beginning of this word is. No, something.
At the bottom,
Composters? Okay.
decomposers.
Oh,
Decomposers.
Yes.
It's a fill in the blank. It's actually a quiz for you.
Good.
I'm good to turn the page.
Yeah, you can check that in the classroom.
Oh, I love that connection between science and social studies
Right?
with food preservation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I want to go with 5th grade.
Yeah.
When I was teaching kindergarten, I had a little worm farm in the classroom, and the kids could put their, if they had compostable
Mm-hmm.
snacks, they could put them in there and it started improving the kids' snacks because they wanted to be able to put something in
Oh,
the
something
worm
good
in.
farm.
idea. Mm-hmm.
Totally unexpected, but it was good.
Uh-huh. And then these pictures, those are all 5th grade pictures of everything that she was referring to.
Oh.
I don't have
Do you not have it?
Oh, here, you have that one back.
under wraps.
And then I just put my goals that I have here for us next year to work on as a school.
I think these are great goals.
Mhm.
Big shout outs to number 2 and 3, especially.
Mhm.
I feel like last year at a learning committee meeting, we talked with Holly about getting like a group of people together to talk about
Sure.
limiting screen time.
We are
But you
working
did
on
already-
that.
you
We
did.
are, yep. The technology committee meeting, yep. So that is something that we are looking at, yes.
The middle school is part of that.
Hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
It's yep. Pre-K
They're
to
on
12.
screens a lot. Yeah, so.
Crystal's very passionate about it.
If I could.
Get rid of them.
Yeah, pencil and paper.
Uh-huh.
Something in the legislature right now that's would require districts to have policies on how to screen time. I don't think it's very far advanced through the process.
Yeah.
Looks like they're cooking that up. So.
I'm reading The Anxious Generation, and
I have that book. I haven't started it.
yes.
Yeah, I think people are realizing just how detrimental it is, especially, I mean, I just want to go up to people when I see them in the store and their little baby in their, you know,
Give them an iPad.
thing has
They're
their,
sitting there
they're
and they're
sitting there with the
holding it.
phone and I just want to go, you do know what you're doing.
Or restaurants, like they don't.
Yeah,
Mhm.
there's no
They're
interaction
not
going on.
communicating. No, and they
Oh my
talk
goodness.
about the detriment, like language delays
Yes.
because
Oh my
they're
goodness.
attached to their screens. You look at behavior in the schools.
Yes.
It-
Yeah, like the attention span now is like 8 seconds.
Right. Because they're so used to that instant.
Yep, that's horrible.
Mhm. Yes.
Crystal,
Yeah.
thank you
Yes.
for your
Yes.
presentation.
Sorry, I didn't print that right.
It's still
It's-
working.
It's just, it's just as well.
Sorry you had to use your ink and your
No,
paper.
well, that's why I'm like, I'm gonna limit it.
Did you have any feedback from teachers about Sabbath? I know we've heard from other schools about it.
Do you really want to hear?
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to hear my thoughts.
Yes,
don't
we
have
do.
Here you go.
I'm not a fan. Not at all. Not at all. We were already using something here previous to last year's work on the committee that was working. And this program here is a setback from what we were doing. It's not, in my opinion, not meeting the needs of why we set out to get a program. It's the foundational skills in the younger grades that first need to be addressed and then move on. It doesn't stop there. It needs to continue. And I don't think this particular one meets the needs that we were looking for, again, in my opinion. But yeah. And yeah, I could go on and on, but I won't. I won't because there's.
You should say something like "thank you," so she ends.
Well, if you still have those
Yeah, yeah.
books, that, what is it, CY?
CKLA.
I mean, they could be added to the library, you know, and have them still be utilized.
Mhm.
We're going to be having a meeting of reconvening a district literacy team at the end of this month on the 28th. We're going to take a whole day and sort of talk about, okay, now that we're a year in, where are we? How has it gone? And where do we need to go from here? And, you know, I came to this from a high school background, so all of this was really new learning. And I definitely came to it with no preconceived notions. And I didn't have an idea of Sabbath's good, Sabbath's bad, any of it. So I've been in a learning mode this whole year. And at this point I think I can say that I definitely see some deficiencies in the Sabbath program. I don't want to overstate that too much because there are some teachers in schools that are really liking it.
Mhm.
And I think in particular the schools where they didn't feel they had a program at all, feel that it's been a gain, and that's really legitimate. And we sure spent a lot of money on it. And so it's not going to go away. But I personally think now, if I were the teacher, what I would be feeling is this program is huge, number one. And the way, if you listen to the Sabbath's reps tell you how to do it, of course, they're going to tell you have to do every single thing in it step by step with fidelity, and you don't. I think the teachers need to become fluent enough with it that they know what to take from it as a resource and where they have to supplement elsewhere, and they do have to supplement elsewhere. And then there's also this, it really is preoccupied with the teacher instructing the whole class together. It doesn't have enough space for small group instruction and differentiating by reading levels, etc. And people need to have the space and grace to do that.
Well, by skills, they need
By
to
skills.
by skills,
By skills,
not the level,
yes.
but they're by skills. Yeah, I strongly feel that there needs to be continued teacher knowledge in the science of reading, because using the benchmark assessments that we have now, they don't even really truly understand what that data means, and that's what you're supposed to be using to inform your instruction. So there needs to be continued knowledge there, along with, okay, if these are the components, we need to build that phonemic awareness, we need to build phonics, we need comprehension, fluency, vocabulary. What does that look like and how are we going to do that? And how is this program either doing that or not doing that, to know what they need to supplement with to meet the kids' needs? Because again, just using the program, it's not going to, and it's very disjointed. There's no real nice connection with what they're learning here for they're decoding this, and then what their spelling words are. It's not connected, so that makes it really difficult for kids. And if they're just using this program, then even the younger kids are not going to be actually reading books at all. Even the decodable books that are using the skills that they're being taught, they're not even in books. So I have a
It's
whole
like
library
the
that
excerpts. Yeah,
well,
excerpts
those are for the older kids. I'm talking about the young. I mean, there's a very thin decodable book, but that's something for them to use on their own independently.
Right.
So they're not really having that instruction with the teacher in the actual book. There's some passages, but so I
Right.
have a whole collection, library collection that I've been building of decodable books that the teachers are using to have an actual book that the students can practice the skill that they're being taught with. So yeah, I do have a lot of issues with the program.
When we all voted, I mean, I didn't even vote for any of this anyway, but the literacy program change, we just said yes. It just went through as yes, approve this new literacy. But then what happened? Because none of us knew it was Sabbath or whatever.
Right.
We don't know any of that information until after people are complaining or not complaining about it.
There
It
was,
was-
a, there was a committee, and it had teachers and an administration. There were 4 people, programs that came and did presentations, and then the team voted to narrow it down to 2, and then
And that team there voted for CKLA. That's the one that won. And then because of transparency, it wanted to be put out to all teachers in the district to have an opportunity to look at the 2 top programs and choose whichever one they felt was going to meet the needs. And it was all teachers sharing their thoughts and voting, including
each school got 1 vote.
yes.
So that's how
It was the majority.
decide that.
It
So
was
there were 5 votes, and
Oh, I
It
didn't
was-
even know that piece.
and then
So what was it, the
decided
majority
very
in each
quickly.
school, and that was
Yes.
their vote?
That was their
yes.
vote,
So
And if I had to
PE
predict,
teacher.
it would have been probably Friendship, Miller, and Union voting in favor of Savas, and Prescott and Warren voting not for Savas. Okay, I'm just guessing. It doesn't even matter. I don't know. We are where we are.
Right.
Anyway,
so
this
each
is what
pro-
this
each
is what I
program
came into.
had different amount of money, or
Yeah,
but they
would've been
all
really-
fell under science of reading, just different
More
ways
cost-friendly.
of presenting
It would have definitely
it.
been more cost friendly.
What would happen?
CKLA.
Yeah, it's a lot
It
less
was like
expensive.
at the end,
So that, I mean, to
it
me,
was
just
very rushed. And
as a board member, that's unfortunate for that not to have been presented to us as well, when we just had a list that said approve or not approve our district literacy plan that includes the science of reading. That's literally all we as a board said yes or no to.
Mhm.
Not programs that cost X amount or whatever. I mean, I think that's an important thing that as a board we should.
I mean, there
Have
was a
had it.
huge grant that
But
needed to be spent by a certain time,
right.
and I think
Right.
that's
It was
why
basically
it
all
ended up
gone now.
it's
Yeah.
gone now.
It was ESSER.
And that's
money.
why it was like, this needs to be decided now. So it did feel like we're taking a whole year to try to learn and understand and make the best decision. And then at the very end, it felt like it kind of just
Rush.
It was a
rushed
very
and fell
rushed
apart.
decision.
And
Yeah.
yeah, Very.
And without a lot of people having information.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't there, but I can only imagine that when it came down to the staff as a whole voting on these two programs, they weren't insiders. They didn't really know, they couldn't fully know what they were voting on. And I think a lot of people, Savvis presents really well. I mean, it's big and it has lots of like things that go with it. And I can see why it looked good to people. And I'm not saying it's bad. It does have strengths for sure. And I do think, especially if you came from a school where there was nothing, it feels like a win. I'm seeing though that if you talk about the science of reading, that program is very light on the actual components of the science of reading. And it's structured in such a way that if you're a teacher just getting it, it's so prescriptive and so huge. And, can't go back. We have it now. We've paid all this money for it. What we've paid for is 7 years of all the resources. But only the first year of PD. I don't know if you remember discussing that, but so we have all these resources for 7 years, including all the new consumables that come along each year. So I think that Crystal is right. I think we need to keep educating our staff about what the best practices for teaching reading are. And then everybody needs to take their understanding of that and look at the resources they have and figure out, here's how we can use this. And there are ways we can use it. And here's how we need to use our judgment to supplement it and modify it. And I think our job is to provide the training and to also provide people with the grace to be flexible. At least that's the tone I've been hoping to set.
I mean, something simple that could be done. Here we did a book study of the logic of English. That's extremely important and informative. Teachers were reading it and were like, oh my gosh, why did we not know this and whatever. And then the DOE offered for schools to apply for a grant to take a course through AIM. And I applied and got it. So I have my special education teacher, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, and myself all taking this course. It's like a 5-month course. And in the end, we get $5,000 to put towards literacy resources. But the knowledge that we're getting from this, I mean, we took the Hill one last year, but this one is extremely informative in being able to apply things directly right into the classroom. So again, it's just continuing to build our understanding, our knowledge, so that we can make sure we're making that difference with the kids.
And I think if I come at this from a different angle, just the angle of human beings who are professionals who are implementing this, to me, it's really important that it not feel toxic. And because if it feels toxic, then it will come across toxically and it won't be implemented effectively. And having been a teacher for a long time, it's really important to have your expertise and your experience honored. So I think there's a lot of work in continually checking in with the teachers about how is this going and how are you making it work and how are you being creative in making it work. And not only having that be okay, but be celebrated.
Thank you.
Sorry. Sorry.
No, we've asked everybody so far. We want to hear it.
It's great that you asked the question. Part of it not being, anything that's not talkable is toxic. So it's really important that it be talkable from all angles. So I appreciate that you spoke up.
Is there anything else anyone has?
Not from us.
No?
Do you want to do a walkthrough of the school?
Well, we can do let's do an official
Oh, yeah, you're gonna
adjournment so
do-
we don't need to come back. So it is, I have 6:08 and we are adjourned.
Okay.
I'm not going to be able to be on the walk. My husband and I are one